97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
We expect to win every time we step on the field. That's just the mindset and the culture that we have.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcasting network. Of course, Jeff Mosher, Adam Caplan dropped a great new pod Wednesday morning. Another one coming up tomorrow morning as they're recapping, of course, what happened in the Saints game. And as we start now to look forward to the Cardinals game, Adam Caplan joins us every Thursday on the Boardwalk kind of hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. Adam, how you doing this Thursday?
Doing well, guys. Hope you're doing well as we get into Week 15. The Eagles will play at Arizona. They just released their updated injury report. Jack Driscoll didn't practice, which we all know he's not playing this week with his MCL sprain. But and Avonte Maddox, we know, was not going to play with his knee injury. But everybody else on the 53-man roster was able to practice today.
So, before we get to specifically the game, you mentioned Jack Driscoll. I got to ask you, this feels like I asked Moshe about this yesterday. This is a gut punch, right? I mean, the guy actually played well. Rodney McLeod, he goes down. He's done for the year. Is there a bit of a feeling of almost like, you get the win, but then there's more injuries?
Yeah, it would be such a big deal. Like, Jack Driscoll, remember, he was drafted to be, and he probably will be over the years, to be their swing tackle, also could play guard. He was the way that it was supposed to happen. He was supposed to be their 9th or 10th offensive lineman this season. But remember, he is now the 5th offensive lineman lost for the season. So, as you said, Josh, you just cannot afford to lose him. So right now, Matt Pryor is going to take over, and all they have left is Brett Toth. That's literally it right now of anyone who's seen any time. So they can't afford another injury. And what has surprised me also, they've not added a veteran offensive lineman from the street. So they've got the kid that they brought in from the Washington practice squad, but who had very limited playing time. So look, they've got some challenges here, no question.
Now, of course, the expectation is that Matt Pryor is going to be at right tackle, as you guys have mentioned on the podcast a couple times now. In your eyes, from everything people tell you, how much of that is a step down? Because you go from Lane Johnson to Driscoll, and Driscoll is playing well, and now down to Matt Pryor.
It's interesting, Josh. I was told, pretty strongly that Matt Pryor's best position by far is right tackle. This is really the only position where they think, the belief is that he could really function at a higher level. Guard, look, he did a yeoman's job last year. He kind of was a surprise. But he had a very difficult training camp, not regressed. That's why you saw early on he really was not playing. And now he's at the position where he's most natural at. He's so big and long and strong. You want to have him at a position where he's comfortable, and right tackle clearly is it.
Adam, what did you see from Jalen Hurts in his first start last Sunday?
Did a good job. Really handled everything well. So confident out there. I mean, I get that he's a rookie and he didn't throw for 300 yards, but he functioned well. He didn't throw the ball to the other team. That's obviously been big when you consider the turnovers they had with Carson Wentz, particularly throwing it. Now, he did have the one fumble. He'll learn from that, but threw the ball out of bounds a bunch of times, which is what they wanted. When you don't have it, get rid of the football, throw it out of bounds where no one else could get it. So I was pleasantly surprised at how well he played. He had no idea how he would play because it was his first NFL start, going against arguably the NFL's best defense, and he ran the ball well. 15 times he ran it, 3 kneel downs, and he did a good job. I was very happy with the way that he functioned in the offense.
It's funny that you mentioned the running game because Miles Sanders had a big day on the ground too, his biggest game all season. How do you feel that Jalen Hurts impacted the running game? Because I personally believe that it was because of Jalen Hurts and his running ability that it opened so much stuff up for Miles Sanders.
It's funny you say this because Miles Sanders kind of gave it away last week. He didn't say exactly what they would do, but he did say, listen, with Hurts back there, he talked about zone read and RPOs. I mean, we all knew that probably if we've seen him play, Jalen Hurts, going back to Oklahoma, that was probably going to happen anyway. And he thought it would help him, and sure did. Now he leads the NFL in runs over 70 yards. Not that a running back's going to have that. It's a very unique stat, but it clearly helped him. And the Saints had some uncharacteristically strange mental errors, which they shouldn't have had. But when you're going against a quarterback you haven't faced before, and remember, there was no preseason tape. He never started an NFL game. You might make some mistakes, and they did, and the Eagles certainly took advantage of it.
Adam Caplan, Inside the Birds Podcasting Network. Of course, the latest episode will drop tomorrow morning. Him and Jeff Mosher will get more into the Eagles versus the Cardinals game on that episode at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and download the latest edition of the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam Caplan at Caplan NFL on Twitter. Adam, sticking with Jalen Hurts, I thought you and Jeff made a great point on the pod that dropped Wednesday morning, which is about, people are talking about Hurts' completion percentage, but some of those throws were him getting the ball out of there instead of taking sacks. And to me, that's a huge deal. I think that's a great point that you guys brought up. Can you get more into that about how, listen, this guy wasn't stalling the offense?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you really have to watch the game when people look at numbers and they just throw numbers out there without having any context. I mean, that's the problem that we have sometimes on social media. If you look at 17 for 30, well, again, now you could say there are 4 or 5 throwaways, depending on how you really look at it. But if you add those as either throws he didn't make because he handed it off or around with the football, those aren't completions because, again, he was not trying to throw it to a receiver or tight end or running back. He's trying to get rid of the football. So that's really what happened. No, again, I know the Eagles were very happy with the way he processed. And here's another part of the game that I really liked. If you're going to run the football as much as he did, you cannot hesitate. If you see open grass, go. Don't wait till it closes. And that's the key to being a good running quarterback, if you're going to run. Now, eventually, he'll be more of a pocket passer. That'll probably happen. Now, this week will be a little bit tougher. I know we'll get into that in a couple minutes. But if you're going to run, please be decisive. And he was, and that was good to see.
Flipping it over to the defensive side of the ball, because to me, that was incredibly impressive. I mean, they had 17-0 lead at halftime. I mean, I don't think when was the last time we saw the Saints offense, whoever the quarterback is, totally shut down like that? Talk about the Eagles' D-line, because that was a huge game on Sunday.
Look, if you look at quarterback pressures, they're the number one quarterback pressure team. That doesn't mean number one sacks. It means pressures are when you make the quarterback move off the spot. They're great with that. They just have not, as you know, and Jeff and I have complained about it on Inside the Birds, they don't force a lot of turnovers. But what they did in this game was they were relentless. I could tell that Sean Payton was not very happy in his Monday press conference with some of his linemen. He actually called them out by name, particularly Andrews Pete. The Eagles are just incredible, and Javon Hargrave was awesome. Now, he had been coming on in recent weeks, but this was his best game as an Eagle. It wasn't just a couple sacks. Relentless. Got low, got leverage, was phenomenal. Fletcher Cox played very well. Josh Sweat does it once again. What a great draft pick he's been. The fourth rounder for Florida State in 2018. He's been awesome. So you got to give Jim Schwartz credit. Look, I know he doesn't like the blitz, and he played against a running quarterback, although Taysom Hill did not run the ball effectively. He had some nice runs, but he didn't break their back like Hurts did. And I just got to give the coaches credit. Jeff and I have been very critical of the Eagles play callers this season, but Jim Schwartz and their defense, if you look at, and he does this every season, just when you think that he's not having a good year, the numbers always come home. He's going to be in top 10 in most important categories other than turnovers. This is kind of the story with Jim Schwartz every year.
Adam, the secondary played really well for the most part until the injury bug really bit them, specifically with Rodney McLeod and Darius Slay. What is the future now for these next couple games with that secondary now being moving parts again?
Yes, Avonte Maddox won't play this week, and it sounds like he's going to be out a couple weeks. So that with his knee injury, this is a problem. Nicole Roby Coleman, I mean, he obviously he sees a lot of time in the slot. He's played some outside the season, which is not ideal. He's just over 5'7". This is certainly not good. You're going to see sort of a committee. I strongly believe you're going to see Jalen Mills move back to corner. They've got a bunch of young safeties they like. Kayvon Wallace is a draft pick. Braylon Arnold and a couple other young safeties. They have the thing is they have the bodies at safety. It's just that they don't have any experience, and that's the problem that you have now with Rodney McLeod out for the season. In fact, he's got some fully guaranteed money next year. They could walk away from it, but they'd owe him the money. But they love having Rodney, around. He's been such a great example of being a great veteran and high character guy. Just great stuff for the community. We'll see what they do once he's recovered from his injury next summer. But what you're going to see, guys, is a lot of younger players playing at the safety position. And Michael Jacquet, when he comes back from his hamstring injury, he'll be there at corner because you know what? He has size. He's around 6 feet. So that's a guy they want to take a look at. But remember, he's been out for a little bit with a hamstring injury.
Also on Sunday, we saw another solid game for Alex Singleton. He had 8 solo tackles in the game. Between him and Javon Hargrave, those had to be two of the biggest takeaway stars from that game on defense.
Josh, Alex Singleton is maybe one of the biggest stories for their defense this season that no one's talking about. He's been absolutely phenomenal. This is quite the find, the former, we call him a CFL refugee. He's been quite the story. He's done a great job, and this guy's an every week starter for them. There's simply no way that he doesn't start the rest of the season. Great find for them, given their pro personnel department. He doesn't make a lot of mental errors. Physical errors because he's not as talented as some other players, but he's been a great story of development, and this guy came kind of out of nowhere. I never expected this, but he's been a great story of development.
Adam, this Eagles defense against this Cardinals offense. Now, Cliff Kingsbury runs that air raid type system, and he has the guy to run it with Kyler Murray. How does this defense match up now with all these guys hurt in the secondary? You got Christian Kirk, who's a big play, underrated threat, along with DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. This is going to be a problem because, as we were just saying, with all these guys out, they're a big, what we call 10 personnel or 4 wide receiver offense. This is going to be an issue because what they'll do is they'll spread them out, and you're going to this just gives the Cardinals so many matchups. You mentioned Christian Kirk, who's been dormant lately. Middle of the season, looked like he was having a breakout season, but he's been very quiet lately. Kirk is sort of the designated deep threat when they throw it deep. He will be that guy. And watch number 85, Dan Arnold, who was a receiver in college. He doesn't get a lot of passes. When he does, he scores. He's a vertical threat at tight end. So this is where, to me, the Eagles are. If they had everybody healthy, I thought the Eagles could steal this game. But when you look at the matchups, guys, they don't. They just this issue that the Cardinals have that'll hurt the Eagles is they could spread them out. And with all these injuries at corner and safety, to me, this is going to be the difference in this game this week. And plus, with Kyler Murray being a running quarterback and the way that he runs to the edges, you got to be very, very disciplined.
Adam Caplan, follow him on Twitter at Caplan NFL. Inside the Birds podcast, live right now on the Inside the Birds podcasting network. Also, the next episode drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and download the podcast when it drops. Now, you mentioned about the injuries on the defense. When you think about also for the Eagles, do they in some ways have the offense to maybe keep up with the Cardinals if this game potentially gets away from them defensively?
Yeah, it's a great question. In fact, that to me is the story of the week here with Jalen Hurts because they got the big lead. They didn't ask him to bring the team back. That's really the next test, and I'm almost certain it's going to happen. I would be shocked if they got a 10-0 lead. But then again, obviously, if the Cardinals get behind, they still could score because of the issues the Eagles have in the secondary. It's a fascinating scenario here. It would not shock me if he had to throw the ball 35 to 40 times. Yes, the Eagles don't want to do that, and Miles Sanders was great. To me, as much as I love throwing the football, coming out and throwing, because that's what analytics tells you, you should do that. I would like to see a little bit more of the run game with Sanders and also Jordan Howard, who obviously was not working last week. I'd like to see him actually play this week. And then the other issue is, Hurts ran the ball 15 times. Let's take out the 3 kneel downs. How much are you going to have him run this week? That's another factor. To me, I go more to the actual running backs than Hurts this week. It's going to be a fascinating dilemma for the coaches.
Speaking of fascinating dilemma, the Cardinals have a defense that's very different in terms of style and the players you have to watch out for than the Saints do. What are some of the things that concern you about the Cardinals' defense for the Eagles?
Yeah, and they run a 34 front. It's not like the Eagles haven't played a 34. They did great against the Steelers. That was unfortunately when Travis Fulgham was doing well. When I say unfortunately, he's not a factor anymore, which has been bizarre to me. But when you look at the Cardinals, they're not a shutdown defense. You can move the ball against them. They've had some bad games. They've had some good games. They were terrific last week. Because what happened against the Giants is that Hassan Reddick, the former first-rounder out of Temple, he had 5 sacks. Well, look, he's fast. He's a speed rusher. You got to identify him. Remember, they don't have Chandler Jones. Other than the great Patrick Peterson, they're not very good at cornerback. So, look, you can move the ball against them. They are not a shutdown defense. You just got to be able to protect. That's what we were saying earlier. Matt Pryor's got it. He's just got to do it. He's got to do a good job at right tackle. Jordan Mailata, we didn't talk about him. He was terrific last week. He's been an unbelievable story of development for them. Their guards have to continue to play well. I was blown away with how well the Eagles' offensive line played. Again, yet another situation where who saw it coming? I certainly didn't.
You mentioned about Mailata. I mean, it's somebody I asked Mosher, and I'll ask it to you as well. You guys talked about it on the podcast. You know, is there something to be said for the fact the way the Eagles have developed this guy from being basically somebody that most people had never heard of to being a bona fide left tackle for this team? Yeah,
and it's funny because they didn't. Jeff Stoutland, the O-line coach, really didn't want to play him early, but he got forced to. And what's funny is it's not that he didn't want to play him. My sense is he didn't think he was ready. So he relied on other players. You remember Mailata also played right tackle this season. But he was also the guy who was instrumental in them trading up to get Mailata 3 years ago in the 18 draft. And the one thing is our friend Trey Thomas told us on our Inside the Birds pregame show, when you look at the way that Jeff Stoutland teaches technique, it's a little bit different than most offensive linemen are taught. They're taught to let the guy get into you a little bit, and then you strike him, which is not naturally, from a mental standpoint, the way you would teach it. But Stoutland's such a great coach that eventually these players get it, and they do very well, as we know, and Stoutland's one of the best O-line coaches in the National Football League. So this is really one of the most remarkable stories. A guy who never played football in his life, never even put it on a helmet until the Eagles actually drafted him. And now, right now, he looks like a guy at the very least who compete for the left tackle job next year against Andre Dillard.
Yeah, and that being said, I mean, you came into this season, it's supposed to be Dillard out there and Brooks and Johnson, and now you're going into this game with Pryor and Herbig, and I mean, we just said his name, Mailata. What do you think about the play of this team moving forward? Because it feels like that the job that Stoutland has done is really elevated the play of a bunch of guys who I think the casual fan or the average fan would have turned around and said, who is that?
Right. Look, it's an incredible story of development for these guys. And this has been the story this season. And it's happened in recent seasons. These coaches will tell you it's like they don't want to have to coach these backups as much or in terms of starting, but they're having to do that. And right when you thought it was a dismal season and they probably wouldn't win another game, they beat a team like the Saints. You never could have predicted it. This is what they did last December. When they won those final 4 games to get into the playoffs, we didn't see that happening. Just been a great story for their coaches because Jeff and I have really criticized their coaches this season, based on what we've seen and what other people around the league have seen. But give them credit; they've been resilient here. But you know what? That's 1 week, and they've got to do it once again on the road against the Cardinals.
He's Adam Caplan. Follow him on Twitter at Caplan NFL. Make sure you subscribe and download the Inside the Birds podcast. The next episode drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. And, of course, he mentioned the Inside the Birds pregame show with Adam, Jeff Mosher, and Greg Cosell, Trey Thomas. Jeff Mosher will be back in tomorrow for football at 4. Adam, always great stuff.
Guys, thank you.
And, of course, football at 4 being brought to you today on the Sports Bash by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now and match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com and win real money with their sportsbook along with casino games from the comfort of your home. Must be 21 or to play. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.